Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome to Wrestless Radio, Episode 1. This is a brand new podcast diving headfirst into the wacky and wonderful world of professional wrestling. I'm your host and longtime wrestling fan, Julian Coolboy Concilio. And joining me on this log flume adventure ride and is the overall clueless perspective in this equation, the smoking hot smoker himself, Scott Nananovich. Scott, how's it going?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Julian.
Do you possess the testicular fortitude to learn about some wrestling here today?
Well, you know, I haven't really had much exposure to it in the past, so I'm willing to give it a go. I mean, you've liked it for a long time, and I only just recently found out how much you like wrestling.
Yeah, I was definitely a closeted fan.
Yeah, well,
For many years.
I guess it does have a pretty bad rap. And in the past, I have been the type that says, there's nothing real about it. But if you like it, a respected colleague of mine, there's got to be something good about it. So
I think a good starting point is to kind of explain what this podcast is and will be going forward. It's essentially to teach you about this thing that I've watched and have much appreciation for most of my life.
yeah.
It also happens to be something quite niche and different. I don't know if you know this, but wrestling is weird.
Yeah.
And it isn't really like a traditional form of entertainment as well. It's very much out of the mainstream spotlight.
So it's like the hipster sport.
Yeah, essentially. A lot of beards in wrestling. A lot of beards.
All right.
And look, a lot of what has happened like in the past and stuff, it's kind of flown under the radar.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing about a podcast is you're able to bring that to light and maybe introduce new people to some of the weird shit and some amazing stuff as well, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But like a lot of the stuff that's happened, it's so fascinating to hear about and to learn about. And I think that the number one thing I want to get out of this podcast is to kind of, maybe you won't be a fan, but at the very least you'll have some sort of respect for wrestling.
Yep.
And I honestly don't think that will be a hard task to do, because I just showed you your first match, and it seemed like you were a bit taken back a little bit.
I was surprised at how entertained I was.
Were you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too much into it now, but at the start, I was questioning why the fuck, excuse the language, we should have given a language warning at the start.
That's fine.
I was wondering why on earth
We're all adults.
I was watching this, because nothing was happening. They were kind of like rolling around on the floor and just like bored.
Yeah.
But then it actually got interesting, and I started picking up on stuff, and yeah, it was like I actually wanted one of the guys to win and one of them to lose.
And that's the kind of the thing with wrestling. It's always been under this kind of stigma of fake fighting. It's always kind of been tossed aside a little bit, not really given too much attention. The number one thing we want to do with this podcast is kind of present wrestling in an approachable light, because it is very daunting to introduce somebody to, especially me introducing this to you.
Yeah.
I've tried to take a lot of care with it and showing you a very specific match that, a lot of things went right in this match.
And it's a guided tour.
It is a very much holding your hand. Let's go, son. Let's get through the world of wrestling. But it was very much taking a lot of care into showing you a wrestling match.
Yeah.
And because it can come off as confronting at first when you're watching it.
Yeah.
And we can present it as something that's new and interesting, because I'm sure this is very new to a lot of people that might be listening. And at the very least, if you can maybe have some respect after listening to this podcast for the world of wrestling, I think that's a pretty good fucking accomplishment. I can hang my hat on, and I can be pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
And I indeed think this will be a log flume adventure ride.
Yeah.
So Scott, first question for you. What's the extent of your knowledge on wrestling?
Well, growing up, I never really had much to do with wrestling. I was raised in a Christian home. My mum was pretty strict on violence and that kind of thing. So never watched any wrestling, never watched any Power Rangers, Dragon Ball Z, any of those shows. But didn't...
The no fun household.
Yeah, essentially.
Jesus.
I don't think we just didn't watch TV that much.
Okay, yeah, that's fair
We
enough.
did a little bit, but
Yeah.
none of that stuff. But we did have some family friends, I guess, friends of my mum, and they watched wrestling a lot. They were quite into it. And my mum was friends with these other kids' mum, but it was kind of like I was dragged along and I didn't like being there. So this house, small place in Sydney where I grew up, Dundas actually, and number one, they smoked inside the house. Okay. So it was pretty disgusting in there. Yeah. They had 2 staffy dogs.
Yeah.
And they would shit everywhere. There was fleas inside this person's house. These, like, I don't want to sound elitist or anything, but I did not enjoy being there. And
they showed you some
and
wrestling.
They showed me wrestling. Like, they were obsessed with it.
How unhygienic.
Wrestling to me was just like I saw it as trash.
Yeah.
In that environment, and these people that would live like this. Like,
so
I don't want to sound elitist or anything.
Almost everything surrounding it influenced your opinion on wrestling.
Basically,
okay.
Yeah.
I get what you mean.
It's just like why would you want to watch people punching each other and it's not even real? Like, that was my whole view on it. I thought of it as a really low quality of entertainment.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to be proven wrong because you, Julian, I don't see you in that light.
I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn. I seem like a pretty reasonable guy. I don't have dogs and fleas roaming around my house, but in terms of your viewpoint on wrestling is fake fighting and all that kind of stuff. That's not an uncommon opinion on it. A lot of people have that same opinion. You know, because it's when you first see it, it is confronting and it is weird and it's strange, and seeing a lot of people, 20,000 people in an arena cheering for this thing where 2 male competitors are in their underwear and they're rolling around. That's fucking weird, right?
Oh yeah.
How you can't it looks like dog shit for somebody who doesn't know what the hell's going on. You know?
Well, I mean, I guess
you can't shine that shit up right, you know.
Yeah, I guess the whole comparing it to boxing or MMA.
Yeah.
That's full on real violence. These guys bleeding out of their faces and shit, and people get off on that stuff, violence. But then when it's wrestling, at the start, the crowd was going bonkers. The match we watched, Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate.
Yeah.
It's just friggin' rolling around and the audience is still going crazy. I just didn't... Still, it didn't get at the start why people would want to watch that.
They're very much the people in that crowd were wrestling fans.
Yeah.
Very much long-time wrestling fans, and you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with it's because a lot of people obviously compare wrestling to boxing and MMA and other combat sports. One thing I want to address: wrestling is not a sport, and I know a lot of people within the wrestling world they try and make excuses for it, or try and word their explanation in a certain way to kind of spin it as though it is a sport. It isn't, and that's the thing. I think most people kind of accept that. Yeah, it's a form of entertainment, and the word the phrase that is often thrown around is sports entertainment.
Oh yeah,
that's a WWE term that they coined, and that's kind of been the collective opinion on what wrestling has been described as. It's sports entertainment. And there was a point in time where wrestling was treated as real, meaning they kept essentially a lie that wrestling was real, and the audience believed that wrestling was real at one point in time.
Yeah.
So a lot of the early 20th century wrestling, a lot of the audience bought into it as it was a real combat sport. Like boxing, like mixed martial arts, like any other combat sport out there. The audience believed that it was real. Obviously, over time, people got smarter to what was happening.
Yeah.
And there were specific points in history where people came out to say that, no, it wasn't. It's not real at all. It's a form of entertainment, like a TV show or any other like stage performance. It's very much like that.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine being like, growing up your whole life, being like, I want to be a wrestler, and you do all the training and shit for it, and you're like so pumped to learn all these moves, and then you get into it, and they're like, well, you know, actually, mate, it's not real.
There's so many stories of, not nowadays, but probably maybe 80s or something like that, where wrestlers were beginning training, and then they'd get to their, you know, first official match that they have, and it's on TV, and like the person's gone up to us like, oh yeah, I'm going over tonight, I'm winning. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And like they just realized that it's a work, you know, it's a match.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this thing ain't as real as I think it is, you know.
That'd be really heartbreaking.
It would be, but you know, you get over it real quick, I think. So one thing I wanted to tell you about was, what do you think a wrestling ring is made out of? What do you think the material? What materials do you think a wrestling ring is made out of?
The rope seems like it's made out of a bungee cable, by the way that they can like bounce off it so easily.
Yeah.
The ground,
Or the mat.
the mat,
Yep.
seems like a piece of foam on top of like a trampoline. You like bounce all over the place half the time.
Okay.
Not like heaps, but like it just seems to have that little bit of bounce.
Yeah.
And the way that they're like dropped on the head and then they can get like recover from that. Like if you drop someone on concrete like that, they'd be freaking out cold.
Well, let me clarify some things.
Yeah.
The ropes are real. It's real rope that they use,
Okay.
tightened at the turnbuckle. So at the corners of the wrestling ring, there's, you know how it's got like a turnbuckle,
Oh, yeah.
and so that's basically tightened, basically really really tight, so you're able to bounce off it and spring off it quite easily.
Oh.
Sometimes some wrestling rings have the ropes a little bit looser.
What are the turnbuckles made out of? Is it like...
So turnbuckle is just padding. So like the little kind of circular shape in the corner. There's like 3 of them.
Yeah.
In the corner. Yeah, so they're just basically padding.
Okay.
But underneath there is a metal bracket that's holding the ropes together. And that's connected to the ring post that's on the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So those are the ropes. The ropes are real. They're just taped.
Yeah, okay.
The mat does have a foam padding. Underneath that foam padding is plywood. Underneath that plywood is steel brackets.
Yeah, shit.
So it's not as bouncy castle as you might think it is.
Yeah.
This ain't your fucking kids' party. Like,
Yeah, okay.
you know. So when they're landing on it, they're landing on a little thin piece of foam, and like the foam is maybe that thick. I'm holding my fingers apart, but it's probably about 2 or 3 inches thick.
Yeah.
Foam. When you hit it, you're hitting plywood. Under that plywood is more steel. So it's And the reason that there is that kind of give, there are springs, don't get me wrong. There are like small springs, but that is more just for, it makes that clatter sound when you hit it.
Okay.
So it makes that quite loud bang, especially when you're like watching it live, like you're in the arena and you're hearing it. It makes such a loud noise.
Yeah,
When you're
okay.
hitting it. It doesn't come off quite as well when you're watching it on TV, but But yeah, that is essentially a wrestling ring. Well, Scott, since you have the testicular fortitude to watch some wrestling here today, I'd like you to tuck your schlong between your legs, flop your grapefruits out, and let's watch some wrestling. So here we are, Scott, to start you off on your journey. I haven't explained anything to you yet, but I'm going to show you your first match right now.
Sounds good, Julian.
So it's a WWE match from their brand NXT, and it's Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne for the United Kingdom Championship at NXT TakeOver Chicago. Said a lot of words there you won't know. You're looking at me with a quizzical look.
Yeah, none of that means anything to me whatsoever. Except for United Kingdom and Chicago.
Well, that's it. That's basically all you need to know. There's no real. The reason I chose this match was because there was no real story going into it. A lot of it is just like two guys fighting for a championship. That's as simple as you can explain it.
Yep.
And that's easy to understand. For anyone who's getting into wrestling, entry-level match to show anyone is something as simple as fighting for a championship. So.
Well, I guess there's a lot of motivation to be winning a championship.
Exactly.
So that's about as much story as I guess you would need.
What do you think of Pete Dunne?
It's very sweaty.
Do you like the chalk font on his Titantron?
I do not like the chalk font.
It's a great typeface, though.
His outfit really disturbs me.
It's
Is that sweat already, or
It's baby oil.
baby oil? So
bit,
they
bit of a
don't-
sheen, a bit of a shine to the chest.
So what? They can't like hold on to him or something.
No, it's more for aesthetic looks. Over embellishes the chest muscles, your pectorals or your biceps and stuff like that. Makes you look more muscular.
Ah, okay.
Well, a lot of bodybuilders do. Fucking 19 years old. And he's in the top company in the world. Fuck me. Good on him.
It's a nice little
So,
rendering of
do you
the.
like the motion graphic? There's a lot of motion graphics. You love them.
What are they doing?
We got some mat wrestling.
Oh Jesus!
Is that fake?
Pete Dunne's a dirty dog.
Are you picking up who is the good guy, who is the bad guy?
He's totally a dirty dog. He just
Yeah.
ran out of
Look.
the match just to like try and fuck him up.
You didn't...
Come back!
I was just waiting.
Come back from being kicked in the head 5 times. Well, fuck you! I'm just gonna fucking throw you over my back.
I fucking love that. Oh, God.
Oh, what's he gonna do? What? Oh no, the blood's gonna rush to his head. He's not gonna be able to concentrate.
That's
He looks shocked. I can't believe it. I thought I had him. Fucking acrobatics.
I know.
DDT. I don't know what that is. What did I just watch?
He just basically drilled his head into the mat.
Ah.
Yeah.
Why does he keep fucking rolling out?
No, it's a good thing to roll out because he can't pin you again. So because you can't pin him on the floor. So if he rolls out of the ring, he can get a breather and hopefully turn it around. And that's it.
I think I know my least favourite wrestler.
Yeah.
Pete Dunne.
Already?
He's a fucking dirtbag.
Oh man. I
He
wouldn't
was
make
just-
that decision now. I mean, you're gonna see a lot of different people.
Oh, yeah. Well, my limited experience.
And we're back! that was some highlights of us watching the match. And now that you've seen your first official wrestling match, what did you think, Scott?
Well, like I said before, I was very confused at the start. The introduction of the ref being so important, I didn't really realise that with wrestling. And like, you know, I haven't seen that much wrestling, but I'm used to like, I've seen a couple of like the entries that they do with their theme music and their logo and stuff, but I never even knew that the commentator had like such an important part of the wrestling match as well, even though in this match I wasn't really listening to the commentator that much. But I guess what I found really interesting was knowing nothing about either of these wrestlers other than that Tyler Bate was 19 years old and was the belt holder. It was so quick that I could pick who was the good guy and who was the bad guy.
Yeah.
In the match.
So you picked up on that pretty quickly.
Picked up on that
in
really
the match,
quickly.
or was it beforehand?
During the match.
During the match,
about
you picked up on?
halfway through.
Yeah, because I didn't tell you like who was bad guy, who was good guy. I didn't say anything like that. I just wanted to see if you could find out for yourself.
You I think during the match you were like trying to bait it with like the finger.
No pun intended.
With the finger pulling. I didn't get that. I didn't see that.
Well, I was more just trying to explain, like, because you were kind of confused about what they were doing on the mat and what kind of wrestling they were doing, and I was like, oh, well, they're just like, I was saying it's a lot of pantomime. It's a lot of kind of being overly expressive for the audience. Kind of, basically, the opponent is trying to wear down and twisting his arm, twisting his wrist, trying to like basically get the advantage early on. So a lot of matches kind of start off slow. So before we get into that, I wanted to ask, what did you think of the commentary? Did you pay attention to it? Was it helpful during points? Did you feel like it was just kind of white noise? Wasn't really influencing you?
For me, as my first match, it was a little bit of white noise. Okay. To be honest, there was one part that I remember, and it was only because I've heard of the move before, where the commentator was like, "Oh, and he did the DDT," and then I was like, "Wait, what's a DDT?" I had no idea what I was watching, and as you explained to me, I was like, "Oh, that means he, drives his head into the mat." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't. Maybe it was a bit too quick for me or something. I didn't really see that at that point. I guess because there was a lot of, at that point of the match, they were like doing flips. They were throwing each other over each shoulder out of the ring. So
yeah,
it was more like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got the play-by-play of the match, and I kind of took notes as the match was going on to kind of give you some potted highlights of it. In the beginning, it was a lot of just kind of mat wrestling. It was a lot of thing that was kind of boring you, and I could see it, and I was like, oh god, this is a bad idea. But no, the pace did pick up. A lot of the beginning, it was a lot of joint manipulation. It was a lot of like twisting the fingers, bending, that kind of stuff. And if you kind of buy into it, you could be like, okay, I imagine that fucking hurts if someone's, bending your fingers opposite direction that it's supposed to be bent. That could hurt. And, if you buy into it, you can get invested. But I suppose for a new fan, it's kind of a bit, I don't know, it's not believable enough, I think.
Maybe, I think maybe one of my problems is, you listeners can't really see our setup here.
Yeah.
But we were watching the wrestling match on a Surface Pro tablet.
Yeah, so it's
sitting right in front of Julian, and I'm a little bit further away, so I can't see I could see it, but maybe just the size thing.
Yeah.
Was a bit of a
Are you saying we need a cinema experience?
Definitely.
Okay.
We'll definitely have a better get the adapter and all that stuff. But
Well,
don't worry about that.
We'll hit up Hoyts and we'll organise something.
Yeah.
So yeah, after the whole joint manipulation, like kind of twisting the ligaments and all that kind of stuff, both men go to the outside. Dunn hits a fucking brutal suplex onto the ring apron. Now you kind of jumped out of your seat a little bit. You're like, oh shit, that looked like it fucking hurt.
Oh, when he throws him back onto...
He throws him onto the side of the ring.
Yeah, that was the first.
Yeah, that was the first spot that I think got you into it. Like,
yeah.
You were like, all right, I'm in.
That was...
You know?
Yeah.
And, like, so one thing I want to say, and the commentators always pointed out, the ring apron is the hardest part of the ring. You know why? Steel framing around it. That's the steel framing.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
So
there's still there's still the foam and the plywood there, but in the center of the ring, the steel framing kind of peters out a little bit, and it's more spacious in the middle. But on the edge, that's right on the steel framing. So you're landing on foam, plywood, and steel.
Yeah.
As opposed to in the center of the ring where you're landing on foam, plywood, and maybe a spring.
Oh, so the is it a thin layer of plywood? Like, does it have a little bit of bend?
Yeah, well, plywood typically does have kind of a springiness to it, or has like a little bit of give to it.
Okay, yeah. Kind of at that point when I decided as well that I didn't like Pete Dunne.
Yeah.
Because he fucking like a little wussy coward. This was my perspective anyway.
Yeah.
Rolls out of the ring.
Yeah.
And is like laying on the ground like, oh, you know, I'm in so much pain.
Yeah.
And then the other guy, you know, jumps out, you know, to, you know, get him.
Yeah.
And then he just jumps back up. It's like he was feigning his injury.
Yeah.
And then he like throws that move where he throws his back onto
So that was a suplex.
Yeah, okay.
So,
is that what that move is called?
So it's a suplex. It was a suplex position, but he threw him like onto his back onto that ring apron. So a suplex position is basically I put my arm around the back of your neck, I put your arm around the back of my neck, I'll rotate you, basically lifting you up and going backwards over my head essentially, and then falling backwards, and then you basically get a full 180 rotation and you hit the mat on your back.
Yeah.
That's a traditional suplex.
Okay.
There's tons of variations of a suplex.
Yep.
But that in a traditional sense is a suplex.
Okay.
The moves like we're going to get into, it's just like there's thousands of wrestling moves. Like I only know the names of them because I played a lot of wrestling games as a kid, and so because when you create a character in the wrestling games, like you go through the list of like all the moves that your character can have. And so you kind of learn it through that way, and it gives you like a little preview of what the move is. So you kind of learn it that way, and you also learn it through the commentary.
Okay.
Not so much nowadays, but back like maybe 10 years ago, they were more like influenced by like actually calling the moves and the holds and all that kind of stuff. It would actually teach you as a wrestling fan. Okay. Oh, that's what that move is called. Yeah. Oh, so when somebody throws him over, the top rope like that, oh, it was, a clothesline or something. Yeah. So it's more educative with the commentary. Mm-hmm. So after the suplex on the apron, Bate manages to recover. He does a standing shooting star press onto Pete Dunne's back. So did you see this? So you kind of laughed at it a little bit. I remember this.
No, what I'm laughing at right now is that move.
Shooting star press?
Shooting stars. That sounds like a fucking wish upon a shooting star.
That's
what like it is. The opposite of what wrestling is.
It's a gorgeous move anyway.
Yeah.
Like, because he basically does a reverse, almost like a reverse somersault.
Was this after he had him on the ground and was like kicking him in the face?
So do you know... Oh, so yeah, that was that bit where he was literally kicking him in the face.
Yeah, he had him on the ground.
Yeah.
Pete Dunne was like kicking Tyler in the face.
Yeah.
Like four or five times.
Yeah.
And then he just like does a friggin' flip and kicks him in the back.
Yeah, so Dunne was basically holding Bates' arm, and he was basically kind of almost like in a pissed off kind of way, like fucking stay down. Like he was kicking him in the head or in like the side of the neck, and like Tyler Bate was getting pissed off at this point.
Yeah.
So then he grabs Pete Dunne, picks him up in a T-bone suplex, throws him over his head, and he basically gets the advantage after that. Then comes the shooting star press, where he basically does a little bit of a run-up and then kind of rotates almost in a reverse direction, and he lands on Dunne's back and then goes for a pinfall attempt, and then Dunne kicks out. So I wanted to talk about the pinfall attempt. So the way to win a match, you have to both shoulders have to be down, and you have to the ref has to count 1, 2, 3. It can be any like pinning combination. Ultimately, your opponent has to hold your shoulders down. He doesn't have to be directly on top of you, but in some sort of fashion, that's how it has to go.
Say you were like knocked out. Could you just rest your hand on someone and that would still count?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that still counts.
Yeah.
You could be standing up and doing a pose and then put your foot on him. And then people can do that. Yeah, so a lot of with the kickouts did you pick up on like how they were always so close? 2.5, almost just getting the shoulder off. 2.5.
The ref, like right before the referee and the ref puts his hand on the ground.
The ref always knows to stop at the 2.5.
Yeah.
1, 2. Oh no, you got it up. So that is obviously playing into the kind of the story of this match, and a lot of wrestling matches. That's what they do. Kind of build the tension, build that kind of adrenaline, and like.
Oh yeah, but after that first like pin down, if the match ended there,
it would
just be disappointed.
If matches ended like that, it would just like fucking no one would be a wrestling fan. Like, who would fucking watch matches that would just end after the first pinfall? I
mean, you watch all of this like boring stuff at the start, and then they like 3 moves,
a couple
of
good
moves,
and the match is over.
Yeah.
I'd be pissed off if I had like $150 for a ticket.
Oh yeah,
and that's So Bate goes for another shooting star press again, only this time Dunne catches him between his legs and gets him in almost like a triangle submission. He kind of holds his arm and then kind of wraps his legs around his head. And so he's basically got him in a submission hold, but Bate manages to powerhouse out of it by picking Dunne up, deadlifting him, basically. He picks him up and puts him in a powerbomb position and then drops into the mat, goes for a cover. Dunne kicks out again, building that tension, building that story. All right, it's starting to get desperate now. These guys are getting a bit exhausted.
Yeah.
Bate goes for a really long airplane spin. Did you see this? Where he picks him up in a fireman's carry, spins or standing.
Oh, yeah.
And he's spinning around. Like, he got really, really fast there.
But, like, that move, like, I just don't really get it. Like, I mean, it's like, oh no, it's a tragedy. He's got the blood rushing to his head. But, like, if I'm spinning around on the spot, that, like, friggin' destroys me.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it just wear out both of the wrestlers?
I imagine you being in, like, an elevated position, it would probably be worse.
Yeah.
Than you standing and just spinning. But if you're in an elevated position where your feet are off the ground and you're basically looking down and you're spinning, I imagine, like, the effect of that would be a lot worse than you standing up and, like, just seeing the crowd circling around you.
Yeah.
So, and that airplane move, it's kind of, like, been brought back a little bit recently. A lot of wrestlers kind of use it a little bit more. It's kind of an old-timey move.
Okay.
It's very much from the older kind of generation of wrestling.
Yeah.
And that's, it is kind of like, it is very much a cliche of wrestling. That it is the cliche wrestling move, like spinning around in a circle. I don't mind it because it's just kind of part of the fun. And it's kind of one of those things where you just kind of forgive it and like, whatever.
I'd love to see a guy standing on the spot, holding a guy above his head.
Oh, with his hands.
Spinning him around with his hands while he's standing there still.
Like a human pizza.
And then throw him out of the ring. Now that would be quality
Yeah,
entertainment.
throw him into the oven and then
Yeah. And you got a pepperoni pizza.
dinner's ready. Bate goes for a pinfall attempt. Dunn kicks out after the airplane spin. Both men look pissed off. They're nose to nose at this point.
Oh yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, they're looking at each other. They look fucking furious. And, like, you can tell at certain points when wrestlers are kind of in the zone, when they're like, they've gone into that kind of character that I'm a real competitor, and you've just kicked out of a move, and I wanted you fucking done.
Yeah.
And they're staring at each other, and it's like, if you were to try and just talk to them and like tap them on the shoulder, like, hey, how's it going? I reckon they would just like punch you in the face because they're still in that zone.
Yeah.
Like, just like imagine like it's just so intense to see, like, because you could just tell in the eyes, like they've gone to a different place. Nobody's home there. Like,
Yeah.
you know, don't interrupt him. He's fine. Both men end up kind of nose to nose. They slowly rise up to a standing position, and then they start trading blows with each other and start like almost kind of slapping each other a little bit, trying to fire each other up a bit.
Yeah. There wasn't much like power in anything they were doing.
I think at this point they were
kind of both just mirroring each other almost.
Yeah, a lot of that is kind of like getting the crowd worked into it. So it's a lot of... So when those kind of sequences happen, it's mainly just to get the crowd to kind of like, oh yeah, these guys are really going at it. And it's also selling the exhaustion of the match.
Yeah.
So these guys are if you notice, like, okay, there's not much mustard behind those punches, if you know what I mean.
How long was that whole match?
That whole match was only 15 minutes.
Shit, it felt a lot shorter than that.
Yeah, it goes by quick. After that initial like 5 minutes of mat wrestling, it fucking flies at a like 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that's why I showed you this match, because I was like, it's a fast-paced match. There's no story in it. It's easily digestible. You don't have to fucking understand anything. It's just like two guys fighting for a belt, and they go at it and they go hell for leather. So we get more of a trading sequence that ends in Bate kind of using his shoulders to bounce off the ropes, come back, and then
was awesome.
Deliver a clothesline, and Dunn does a full backflip to really sell it.
Well, it looked like that move. I don't know if it was me imagining, but it looked like Dunn was trying to throw Bate out of the ring.
Yeah, essentially.
And he like redirected himself to get his shoulder, neck, nape into.
There's certain wrestlers that are able to do that. Not many wrestlers actually utilize that kind of like that catch can like style where you're kind of bouncing off the ropes in an interesting way to kind of reverse the momentum almost. Yeah, and he delivers like a fucking lariat. Takes his head off. And that was beautiful. I fucking love clotheslines. Yeah. When you see a clothesline and when you see a guy just run full pelt and then just swing his arm around and knock someone's fucking head off. It's so great. I love it. There's so many YouTube compilations of people doing clotheslines. It's so fun to watch. So Bate goes for a Tyler Driver 95. So that's basically where he does almost kind of like a pedigree position, or basically has his head between his legs, hooks both of his arms, basically goes for almost like a tiger suplex sort of thing. I'm saying a lot of words you don't fucking know.
These words, I'm just looking at you. I probably have this expression.
It's
like,
more for the listeners. But anyway, it gets reversed into Pete Dunne's finishing move, which is the bitter end. That gets reversed again into a DDT by Tyler Bate. Yeah. Where he drills Dunn's head into the mat, and he kind of flips like really awkwardly when he hits it, because his back kind of rotates or kind of bends in an awkward position. It looked really fucking brutal. But obviously he's safe and sound. He's all good. Pete Dunne rolls to the outside, and so obviously when somebody rolls down to the outside, that's kind of, he's getting a breather. He's got to get out of there right now because he's going to get beat if he stays in that ring any longer. Yeah. So heels will do that. Sometimes baby faces will do that. And when I say heel and baby face, do you know what those words mean?
I have no idea.
So
what those words mean?
A bad guy is a heel.
Yeah.
In wrestling. So when somebody's, calls somebody a heel, or referring to somebody as like a bad guy, they would say, "Oh, he's a heel."
Okay.
When somebody's a good guy, or a protagonist, I would say he's a babyface. So instead of saying protagonist or antagonist or good guy and bad guy, people would use the term babyface or heel.
Babyface sounds like a bad thing.
No, I mean babyface, like often babyface is kind of referred to people who like kind of look.
Oh, look young.
Yeah, look young and look kind of like, I don't know, nice. Yeah, I think it's more of a. It can be used in like a negative light, but I think
Yeah.
babyface as a term, yeah, it can be used in a positive way.
It's really weird.
And a heel as in HEEL.
The heel of your foot.
Yeah, a lot of terminology. I might have
Get
to
it.
do a whole episode on it because fuck me, there's so much.
Yeah, that was. I did not like that. How he kept rolling out of the ring.
Yeah,
It's like, friggin' you're in a wrestling match. You don't get a break. And then you friggin', he's...
well, it's perfectly legal. It's
Yeah.
perfectly legal as long as he gets in from the referee's count of 10.
Yeah.
He can re-enter the ring.
Can he hear? Can he hear the referee talking or?
So with the referee's 10 count, he kind of just does it whenever. So the refs kind of like they follow the rules, but like not really. Like a 10 count can go like really really slow, like 1, and then he'll kind of check his watch and just like kind of tap his foot on the ground. 2, like he'll be so slow, and a lot of that is kind of just. All right, guys, I'll let you do your thing out on the outside, and then, when you're ready, we'll bring him back in the ring. Like,
I guess the referee counts to try and make it more exciting.
yeah,
Because I noticed that whenever the referee was counting to 3, there's always like 1, 2. Oh!
yeah. It's
really
not
fast.
it's not the same speed as like the pinfall counts.
Yeah,
So
okay.
there you go. Bate runs to the second rope on the apron and does a moonsault, so a backflip off the second rope onto the outside where Dunn was, and then he throws him back into the ring and does a spiral tap off the top rope. So it was like a corkscrew kind of corkscrew splash or plancha almost onto Dunn, and he basically lands his entire body onto Dunn, and it looked like it fucking took the wind out of him. Like he almost landed ass first on Dunn's stomach, and it looked fucking brutal. But Dunn kicks out, of course. That's not the finish of the match. Bate goes for another dive to the floor, but Dunn steps out of the way, so Bate basically lands almost on his head on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
So by the point where he was running up against the ropes.
Yeah.
Dunn was on the outside standing there, and he basically does like a forward dive.
And
then,
just goes head first, basically.
yeah, almost goes head first onto the floor. And do you know what the floor around the ring? That's basically just concrete.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, it's just like a little bit of thin piece of foam, again, but underneath that it's concrete.
Yeah.
So it fucking hurts.
Yeah.
But I guess the story of that kind of move, it was like that was the third like high risk move that he did off like a high position. So it was kind of, the story was one too many risks. He took too many risks.
Yeah.
And that cost him in the end, because Dunn picks him up, throws him in the ring, hits the bitter end, 1, 2, 3, and that's it. Dunn wins the UK Championship.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a bitter ending.
Heel wins.
Yep. So you had the bad guy winning, going over and winning the championship.
It was entertaining, but yeah, I was disappointed in the end. But I guess the good guy can't always win.
What did you think of the match overall and the overall experience? Because the match itself, the crowd, the commentary, the whole energy of the match and everything surrounding it. What did you think?
It was pretty over the top.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Like, if I was watching this, if instead of wrestlers, it was animated cartoons. Like, I tried to look at it
Yeah.
in that light, and it was and I wasn't looking at it and going, well, you know, you can't do that, or like it was entertaining, and the wrestlers had a huge energy about them.
Yeah.
And
larger than life characters.
Yeah, like they had their clear, like it was, they were like a cartoon character.
Yeah.
Like they had their persona. They were
a very good observation.
Yeah, especially like, with the costumes and with their
the ring attire and the music and the entrances and their kind of mannerisms as well. Yeah.
Like even at like the end of the match, fucking Pete Dunne, hated guy.
Yeah.
It's like standing in the middle of the ring.
Yeah. With
his arms up, holding the belt in his mouth.
Yeah.
And like the buckle of the belt is just like over where his dick is. And it's like, this is fucking mine now. It's like, it was just so like, he just looked disgusting. And his black mouth guard that he's got, he's just like standing there screaming. He doesn't even look at Tyler, who's like on the side of the ring, just like out cold essentially.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, you could just tell that he was like an evil guy.
Yeah, I'm so glad you like picked up on that, because it's like Dunn is a rough looking dude.
Yeah,
like you can see like the acne scars on his cheeks.
Yeah,
he's got kind of like crooked. If he takes out the mouth guard, he's got like really crooked teeth.
Yeah,
like he ain't a pretty guy.
Well,
and it suits suits his character so well that he's a bad guy. He's like this fucking brutal. Like, he'll fucking punch you in the face with a closed fist and, like, not give a shit. Like, that kind of thing. And he's, like, obviously the joint manipulation in the beginning where he was, like, twisting the fingers. Really, like, enjoying it as well. Like, taking pleasure in, like, inflicting pain. Like, that. Like, what a bad guy. Like,
At the start, he looked pretty silly to me, though.
Oh, with the jacket.
The baby oil on his chest.
Oh, yeah. That's a fucking wrestling thing, though. Like, everyone does it. And but the two guys that were wrestling in there, they're not like, I know to you it might like be, oh yeah, they're quite muscular and all that kind of stuff. They're pretty small guys compared to like the giants of the WWE.
Yeah.
And giants of wrestling, because there are a lot of big dudes in wrestling, and yeah, I mean those two would be considered small.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely.
Shit.
Even though like they were pretty like solid, stocky kind of guys. They would be considered, smaller wrestlers.
Well, I guess they didn't have any like Arnold Schwarzenegger vein.
No, they weren't glamour muscles. They were like very much practical. Like, you look at Tyler Bate and his like quadriceps. Like, you look like his fucking thick legs.
Yeah.
And like deceivingly powerful as well. Like when he was able to deadlift done with almost ease. Yeah. Like, he's deceivingly powerful, that kid. And, like, I keep calling him a kid. I don't know why. But
oh, he's like 19.
I think he's 20 at this point.
Oh, okay.
That was last year. But
so he was 20.
I think he should be 20 at this point.
No, like in that video.
In that video, he might have been 20? I'm not too sure.
Yeah,
but
still.
Regardless, he's younger than me, and he's already won a championship in the number one company in the rest.
Pete Dunne, doesn't look like a light guy.
No, he's a stocky guy as well.
Lift him up.
Yeah, he's a stocky guy.
We've been talking a lot about being dirty and stuff in the match. One of the things that I noticed that the commentator was saying, he was saying that Pete Dunne will do anything he can to push the rules while he was doing the twisting and the stuff. But I guess I didn't really know like what rules he was breaking.
So the rules are kind of like implied almost in terms of the joint manipulation stuff that he was doing in the beginning, where he was twisting the fingers. It's kind of illegal. Like, the ref will tell you off for it, or like pulling the hair, or like things that are like, you wouldn't get disqualified for it, but it's very much like, oh, the ref will say, hey, stop doing that, or like if the ref's back is turned for a second, he'll like pull his hair a little bit, or he'll like gouge his eye. He'll try and like poke his eyes or whatever.
Shit.
You know, so there's things, little things like that, are like little, you know, illegal maneuvers, but they still do it. But you're not going to get disqualified for it. Obviously, if you kick someone in the balls, you're going to get disqualified for it, and the ref sees it. Certain things that you won't get disqualified for, and there's certain things that you will. If you kick someone in the balls, yes. If you bring a weapon into the ring and hit someone with it, yes. But if you poke someone in the eye, or if you're going for a pinning maneuver and you pull their tights to get more leverage, like sometimes, like, if you roll somebody up and you've got their shoulders down to get a pinfall and you pull their tights, you get a handful of tights, the commentators will say, and to basically get more leverage, which is illegal, you're not supposed to do that, essentially, because you've got an advantage. Yeah. Or another thing is they'll hold the ropes. If they're pinning somebody, they'll put their foot on the ropes to have all of their weight on top of the person. So if you get what I mean there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's illegal as well.
Yeah.
Does the ref stop them from doing that?
If the ref catches them, but most of the time the story is that, they'll do it behind the referee's back. And so they cheat to win, and they sneak out of the ring. They're like, haha, I got away with it, essentially. You know, and the ref doesn't see it, and like the other guy standing in the ring's like, what the fuck, he grabbed my tights, or, you know, he had his feet on the ropes, what the hell? So it's often like the kind of
conspire together.
No. Like the inside joke is that the refs are fucking idiots. Is that they never see shit. They're always like blind.
Yeah.
So they're always very like narrow-sighted. So when they're counting, they've got kind of their eyes like focused on the guy's shoulders. They'll never fucking see someone's feet on the rope like in their peripheral vision. It's always like they're very narrow-minded. So they're counting, and then they're just like, all they have to do is just like dart one of their eyes to that direction to see someone's feet on the ropes.
Yeah.
But no, like that's kind of the inside joke with wrestling, is that the refs are blind.
Well, I guess
it's kind of it's kind of funny.
I mean, I know we've discussed that WWE is sports entertainment.
Yeah.
Whereas like in soccer, any other football, any sport, people always go mental at the ref.
Yeah.
For not seeing shit and not calling out penalties.
Yeah.
Whereas the refs in wrestling must be like the most extreme version of refs.
Essentially, they are a parody of real referees.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I never thought of that. But yeah. Miss a bunch of shit. They're always like fucking up. Yeah. You watch a football match, like AFL match or something like that.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you'll be pissed off at the umpire because he's not seen something.
Yeah.
That's quite obvious, or he's made the wrong call.
It'd be interesting, you know, like, because
art imitating life.
Yeah, well, like on, you know, modern day sports, like the ref makes his calls, but then they check it against the video.
Yeah.
Whereas that doesn't happen
in
wrestling.
There's been moments where it does happen. They try and avoid doing that though, because it kind of ruins the finish. It gets a bit too muddled if they do that. They just kind of let it be.
I guess they don't really want to stop the match.
Well, no, they don't want to like restart a match because the replay says that you cheated. Well, Scott, that was your first experience into professional wrestling.
Yep.
Overall, are you happy? Are you sad? Do you want to punch me?
No.
Do you want to have a bit of a wrestle ourselves?
Well, I mean, it's pretty hot here in Melbourne, Australia.
We can
today,
kick the fan off. We can strip down to our tidy whities and we can have a bit of a roll around.
Yeah, I think what they do, you know, I'm very happy to follow the warning at the start of the episode of don't do this at home. This is professional wrestling. I'm not interested in attempting any of those moves.
Yeah.
But I found it very interesting and entertaining, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next episode of this experience journey that you're taking me along.
I think next episode we'll be focusing on promos. Do you know what a promo is?
I have absolutely no idea what a promo is.
You're going to have to wait till next time on Wrestless Radio.
Well, shit.
Hey everyone, Julian here from the Cold and Desolate Future. Just wanted to say thank you for listening to episode 1 of Wrestless Radio. This is a brand new venture for Scott and I, and we would love for you to stick around on this journey with us as I teach Scott about the wacky and wonderful world of professional wrestling. If you enjoyed what you heard today, feel free to give a rating, review, a like, or a comment, or whatever your heart desires. It's all appreciated. And just to let you know, this audio podcast is available on multiple platforms like YouTube on our channel. There will be a link in the description. Also available on Facebook at facebook.com/Restless Radio and SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Restless Radio. We also have a Twitter account at Restless Radio, so do consider following us. I'll be staying active on there, so if you have any questions, suggestions, or future episode ideas, please hit us up. Growing a community from the ground up is definitely new to us, and we'll probably be talking to ourselves for a while. But until then, make yourself known to us, because we'd love to get in touch with listeners. Anyway, enough talking to imaginary friends. Thanks once again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Restless Radio. Ready? You refreshed?
Almost. Gotta have my coffee before my beer, brother.
Sure, that's great to hear.
Yeah. The listeners will love it. It's a good introduction.
Just waiting.